Welcome to The Growth Show with Matt Lindsay, where we discuss growth strategies both for business and a personal perspective, discussing all kinds of businesses, growth strategies, technology, investment strategy, and much more. We are meeting with entrepreneurs, investors, app developers, and property developers. Our vision is to help 10,000 business owners grow their businesses. Introducing our host, Matt Lindsay. Matt is a former banker and corporate financier. He now spends his time building his own companies organically and through acquisition, as well as raising capital for other businesses. Matt works with a wide variety of entrepreneurs and investors.
Hello and welcome to The Growth Show. Today's guest is Matt Belcher. Welcome, Matt. How are you doing?
Doing good, thanks, Matt. The two Matts, I think you had another Matt on your show a while back, so there's a lot of Matts knocking around here.
Did I?
I think so.
Who that was. They obviously made a big impression. Anyway, clear. So we have known one another, or known one of one another for a very long time. We grew up in the same town, Harpenden in Hertfordshire. And you have subsequently moved continents. Our wives at the time, or your wife worked with my then girlfriend, and
yes,
you moved to the States. And we used to do some kind of digital marketing stuff. And I remember you did a Frank Kern course, didn't you? Of I don't know, it wasn't mass control, but it was another one of kind of providing these services to businesses. So taking it all the way back to that kind of, those kind of techniques.
I've forgotten about that.
Yeah, which you no longer use, of course, but it is still very relevant. So what I thought was interesting about kind of our relationship and our journey is in some ways they've kind of crossed over, because you used to be more kind of computer focused and technology focused, and I was more financial focused. And now here you are running Caltier Realty, which is a investment platform to enable investors to get into real estate and other asset classes, if I'm not mistaken.
Totally, yes. Yep.
So it's quite an interesting kind of change, although I'm actually in conversations with some people about doing some financial stuff again. But I wanted to talk to you a bit about how you made that journey. And I know that you used to work a lot on growth and kind of mindset and, health and all that good stuff. So over to you, Matt, in terms of kind of explaining your journey and how you've got to where you've got to today.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it? The thin threads in the weave that we take through life to get to where you are. And, it's a never ending journey, right? I don't think it ever stops. This is a bit of an anecdote, but I was with a friend and her brother the other day, and if they watch this, then, oh, well. But the guy was probably my age, mid 40s, and was saying, I've got stocks and this, that, and the other, and I can't wait to retire. And that's great. That's his view and that's his vision, and that's fantastic. But that just doesn't really, that's not vocabulary in my mind necessarily. I think that for me, I want more options and more time to pick and choose when I do stuff. But the word retiring to me was kind of like, why would I ever do that? When's that ever going to happen? I'm not really interested in that. I'll do stuff till I can't do any more stuff. Anyway, so Matt, for your viewers, I'm going to give them a little bit of insight to Matt Lindsay. Matt Lindsay was a little bit infamous growing up, but so was I in our hometowns. And look at us now, right? I'm from Hertfordshire in the UK and married an American gal who, and that's how Matt and I reconnected, through our respective partners at the time. I moved to the US and then subsequently got divorced. And at that time, was kind of wondering what I was going to do. That was 11 years ago, and whether I would come back to the UK or whether I'd stay here. And I'd made the commitment to be here. I had a friend group at that point. I was a couple of years in. I had a home, and I was getting work, and just said, I'm gonna kind of just stay here for a bit. And then I got very involved in large scale real estate financing, sort of traditional debt equity type stuff, and also in the what they call here the EB5 program, which is the foreign investment program. So that's most countries have some kind of foreign investment incentive program. In the US, the big one is called EB5, and it's now 800,000, but at the time it was 500,000, and you could pool groups of investors from internationally, put them into like basically an LP structure, a pooled fund, and then fund large scale real estate. And you would have to show job creation locally. It was all about economic impact, right? In kind of distressed economic areas. And that's a huge program. It does billions and billions of dollars. So by that point, I was like, well, I should probably stay. And that's a bit of the background. So that's why I'm in sunny California right now. I'm looking out the window, and it's actually looks very much like England. But I will be honest, I quite like that. I quite like a bit of grey sky now and again, because it makes me feel, like I'm back home.
Not too far away from it.
Right.
And so when we used to do things together, we were concentrating on, I guess in some ways, kind of leveraging the power of the internet to enable some type of scale. And we kind of did that semi-successfully, but probably not really. But I see that very much as kind of part of the journey to kind of achieving the things that you then go on to do. And so do you still use that kind of digital marketing strategy and those kind of techniques that you learned at that time, or is that not part of what you do today?
It's a great question, Matt. I'm remembering back when we were doing that stuff, and it was interesting because you would very commonly say, you use the term learning curve, right? A lot. And you'd be like, well, it's all part of the learning curve, it's all part of the learning curve, it's all part of the learning curve. And that's totally true. Because right now, so we have a team, I'm sure we'll get into a bit more about how Caltier works and what we're doing with that. But for example, we have a team of people, like digital marketing team, right? And it's kind of, I'm the CEO of the company, and you too, you have to have view over everything that's going on, right? You're not necessarily going to deep dive into each topic, but you have to have enough vision to see what everyone's doing, and to be honest, to know if it's BS or not, what they're telling you, right? You have to have that kind of gut intuition, like when this expert on whatever the topic is says, this is how we do it, you kind of have to be like, do I really think that's the way? And so it's fascinating because I find myself a lot, especially on the digital side and the online side, I'm way more knowledgeable about that than I realize. And I was thinking back, and it's because of all the stuff you and I did. It's that thousands of hours of courses that we downloaded, the videos we watched, the websites we put together, the money we spent on marketing. I mean, that stuff is invaluable. And it's weird how life does this, right? Where today it's come full circle, and I'm not an expert in internet marketing by any stretch, but I have a kind of a, if most people are at a level 4 in their knowledge of it, I'm probably 7 or an 8. And so when I have these conversations with these marketing agencies in our team, I kind of just say, guys, let's fast forward. I understand this. And it's 100% helped the growth of our company, having that background knowledge that you and I basically did in the trenches, I don't know, what, 15 years ago, maybe?
Yeah, it's a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, I've been here 11 years, so it must be at least 15 years ago. So all of that, and I remember you and I would do it. I mean, we would have at the time, a beer or a coffee, right, the next day. And you'd have been up since till 2 a.m. I'd been up till 2 a.m, mucking around with websites, mucking around with ads, opt-in forms, funnels, videos, that type of stuff. And at the time, it felt like a grind. And at the time, you and I weren't really making a lot of money out of it, although we did subsequently make money out of it, but we weren't making like a fortune. But that knowledge that I gained from that period of time is just right now is invaluable, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I think that kind of practical, for me, that practical application of all the things that I remember we were doing PPI, so payment protection.
Yeah, PPI,
so
right.
That was kind of one of the first things that we were actively working on. And ironically, I was working for a bank at the time, but slight conflict of interest there. But anyway, and we were getting these leads through, and it was like, wow, this was, and it was a legitimate claims process. I mean, all those guys, their claims management company, it's an interesting sector, and there's some activities that some of the behaviours I don't particularly like, but nevertheless, it was legit lead gen. And I think at that time it was incredibly easy to do that. Not many people were advertising on Google, and if you did, then you got traffic from it. And I think it's really because the thing that always excites me about the kind of power of anything digital is the fact that you or I can communicate with, it might just be one person watching this podcast. Hopefully it's more than that, but it might just be one. But it might be a million, and you have actually potentially got that scale. And I think that to me has always been the thing that I come back to in terms of, I do stuff with local businesses at the moment, and that's been a kind of an application of the kind of digital marketing strategies that we've learned, and I've applied them, and I think moving on from that, there's a huge, I just love the opportunity that this kind of platform enables you to do. And I think what you've done is a really good example of that, because you've gone to a country, you didn't really know anyone, right?
No, no one really.
You've made some contacts, built a network of people, you become SEC regulated, right?
Yeah.
You've built a network of international high net worth investors who want to come, to the US and get their visa so that they can stay. And then after that, you've then you've effectively pivoted the business at that point in time. You realized that this real estate thing was a real opportunity, and it became, I could see the momentum shift. And I remember we met at MIPIM, the property conference in Canberra.
We did, yeah.
We had a few beers that night. It was a good night. It was quite fun. But
what else do you do at MIPIM?
It was all business, right? No, I don't know. Right. I only did beers. But I think at that time I could see that there was this kind of sense of momentum about kind of creating this real estate platform that had kind of taken over from doing, investor visas. Is that fair?
Yes.
Fair to say?
Actually, that's really insightful, Matt. Yeah, I'll jump into that, but I just want to remark, as you were talking about the PPI, do you remember we also did the travel card stuff?
Yes. Yeah.
That was a really interesting bit. I think we almost cracked the nut on that one. That could have been massive.
I know. So so far.
It was a close one, but it was that in and of itself. And I'm sure now, like with digital wallets and stuff, it's probably not even a thing. But back then, that was like a huge thing. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So not to jump too much into the visa business, because it is in and of itself, it's a whole conversation. But I jumped into that because, again, thin threads. I was actually invited by an attorney. I was looking for consulting work. As you know, Matt, my background's management consulting. If I have something to point to, I would say that. And this attorney is this kind of super eccentric Italian guy here in San Diego, who has a decent law firm, and he loves British people. And he was like, "Oh, I have a job for you. And it was basically these two clients that were trying to do this EB5 transaction. So a foreign investor trying to invest into a company, because you can do one or you can do 500 investors, and they couldn't agree on terms. So he wanted me to come in and help. He was over it. He said, "I haven't got time for this. Can you come in and help negotiate the deal with them?" So I didn't know anything about EB5, and that's where it started. And so it was a necessity. I needed to grow into an industry here. And I jumped into it and got a license by the federal government here in the US. It's called a regional center. It takes maybe a year to get, costs a couple of $100,000 to do it. It's a big commitment, but I saw it as it's like a license to operate that type of business. And it was a huge barrier to entry. So I said, okay, great. I'm going to go get that. I had a partner. We did it together. And we started operating that EB5 regional center business. That industry is a great industry. But to be perfectly frank, everything that you and I did, you know, your mindset, my mindset, it's so slow moving, that industry, right? It makes a lot of money. And there are some people who've been very successful in it. But I just looked at it as a couple of years went on, and I said, man, this business is, you can't really internet-fy it, right? You can't really digitalize it.
Yeah.
It's very one-on-one. You've got to fly to different countries. We went down to Mexico City a bunch of times. I've been in India. I've been in a bunch of other countries. You have to press the flesh. And I love meeting people. You know that. Like I'm a people person. I like to do business face-to-face. But I like to do business face-to-face with my partners. But I love the exponential growth mindset of what digital businesses can give you, right? And I just saw like, this thing isn't really, you can't really grow it in that exponential way, right? You can make a lot of money, but it's always going to be based on your hours and your time and what you're doing. And so at that time, we got into what's called the multifamily industry here. So apartment complexes, right? So these aren't flats, you don't own them, you lease them. It's a massive concept here in the US. There's millions and millions and millions. And in fact, CBRE forecast that in 2022, and we're seeing that now, there's actually a 3 million shortfall of apartments, new ones. So in the US, a lot of people do that. They'll have a home, but they'll also lease an apartment because they're traveling around for work. It's a massive industry, right? They reckon it's worth about 400 billion a year in originations. And then, you know, a lot of people listening to this or watching this are probably in real estate. And so there's always, and I apologize for my Americanisms. I should have said that up front. And because I can't remember some words, I can't remember if they're how to say them anymore. I'm at that Rubicon where I'm kind of like forget, but niche or niche, right? Should be niche. Okay. Yeah. So there's niches within niches within niches in real estate, right? So when someone says to you, I'm in storage, well, it's like, well, what kind of storage? Like to consumer, to business, like where are you located? Are you on the debt side? Are you on the equity side? Are you the operator? Like what does that mean, right? And it's the same with multifamily. The thing that we go after or we're interested in is what's called the it's renovation. It's basically you go in and you buy a somewhat distressed asset in an area that is seeing or will see some economic growth. So typically you're looking for big box stores going in, you're looking for infrastructure. If Amazon was putting a battery factory there, you're like, hallelujah, right? That's great. But that isn't even in and of itself the only thing that would drive it. So you're looking for these assets that typically they're like the owners may have got to the point where it's finished its life cycle of their business plan, right? And they want to finance out. It could be a large fund out of New York, has a whole portfolio. And now they're saying, look, we want to get rid of them. We want to buy more. So you go in, you purchase it, then you do either a light touch or a deep renovation. You sit on it and, you're going to lift the rents because now you've improved the asset, right? You're going to put new kitchens in, you're going to put a dog park in, a dog wash, put solar charging, it's the huge thing now, right? Everyone has Teslas over here or electric cars over here. It's really, really exponentially growing right now. And you sit on that and then you stabilize it for probably 3 to 5 years. It's also generating income, right? And then you hope to dispose of it. So the concept is really, it's just like a house flip on a big scale, right? So we're investing into things that are 300, 400, 500 unit multifamily units. So these deals can be $10 to $100 million type deals. We're going in as very often from our fund as fractional owners. So just to kind of summarize all that, that business is very desirable for investors. However, in the United States, we have this concept called accredited investors, right? Yeah. So the SEC a long time ago said, if you're going to go out and offer as an issuer, if you're going to go out and offer securities or opportunities to people, then typically you can only do it to accredited investors, because they have enough wealth and enough income that if they lose their money, well, they should be knowledgeable enough that they can handle that, right? So
it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because effectively what that does is it stops the ordinary person being able to invest in these types of assets where they could potentially get better returns than normal. So because the same thing happens in the UK, so you have to elect as a sophisticated
right.
investor or whatever. So it's a similar thing, but in some ways, if someone's got the money, why shouldn't they be able to invest into it? But that's a whole different conversation, of course.
Well, Matt, I totally agree with you. I mean, and that's what we're doing at Caltier, right? So there was always this barrier to entry, and this is how Caltier came about. My partners and I were financing in and around that multifamily industry.
Yeah.
And we were seeing the types of returns that people were getting, right? And we were like, I want that. Okay. So we'd contact the issuer, and the issuer would say, sure, you can come in this deal. It's 150,000 minimum. Well, to be perfectly frank with you, I don't always have $150,000 lying around that I can put into stuff 6 times a year, and you have to park it for 5 years, right? So I said, guys, this is really prohibitive in terms of the average person being able to invest into this type of stuff. In 2014, 2015, Obama's administration pushed through Congress the Jobs Act, Jumpstart Our Business Act. And in that, they basically said, look, this crowdfunding thing, Indiegogo. So you and I go on Indiegogo, there'd be an electric scooter, and you'd be like, awesome, I'll put in 100 quid, right? And they'll give you a free t-shirt or some socks for it, right? They said, look, that's ridiculous. Why don't we let people actually own shares in these companies that they want to do? So the Jobs Act allows you to offer non-accredited investors securities, opportunities. Of course, they wrap it with tons of compliance and tons of protections, because they don't want people like me going to Mrs. Granny Smith, right, in Ohio, and telling her, hey, give us your 50 grand and I'll give you 5 times return on your money. We can't say any of that.
Yeah.
Right. And in actual fact, I should say this because my attorney will, anybody watching this, if you go to Caltier, please read the offering circular. I encourage you to read it regardless, because that's the Bible with which we have to operate our business in. So that's what happens. So now you've got this, basically we're valuing the industry. It's about our estimation, it's about a $3 trillion industry, because you've got 10% of the wealth in the US is 10% of the people are accredited, excuse me. So you've got another 90% that are not. So there are people who are, earn really good money, want to get ahead in life. And you've seen this with Robinhood, we've seen this with meme stocks, we've seen this with crypto, right? So all we're doing at Caltier is we're basically saying, look, there's this awesome real estate subsection, which is really hard to get involved in. We've built this platform, which is at caltier.fund, and anyone can go take a look at it. We actually allow international investors to come into our fund.
Although I will say, for anyone who's in the UK, if you do invest into a US-based company, you will be required to file US tax returns for the rest of your life.
Yes.
So do think about that carefully. Just one thing to add.
You will be tracked by the IRS for the rest of your life. There is a way you can buy yourself out, but it's expensive. So
not trying to stop people investing, but raise that.
Yeah, be aware of that. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and we do have people coming in. We don't have an awful lot. I mean, the market's so big here anyway. It's it's fine. But and so that's what we do. People can invest from their app. They can go to the website, and they basically go into. We have one fund at the minute. We're working on the second fund, and that fund basically invests across a portfolio of these very hard to reach multifamily assets. And then, it's all managed online. Everyone gets their distribution. One of the unique things, we're not the only show in town. There's a couple of other companies that have been doing it a bit longer than us. They have a slightly different take in terms of they do different types of real estate. We feel very bullish about the real estate we're involved in. And we have some uniques. For example, if someone puts their money in 30 days, if they say, I changed my mind, they get their money back 100%. But we don't actually have a lock-in. So if they're a year in and they say, I want my 10, 15 grand back, they'll get it back. It may not be immediately, because we have a redemption plan, obviously, to protect the fund, but they'll get it back. So that's a bit of a unique, because most of these other firms have a minimum lock-in period.
Okay. So am I right in saying that Grant Cardone is doing exactly the same thing?
So he's an interesting character, isn't he?
Well, he 10x's everything. And to be fair to him, I don't know if you watched that show that he did where he went out with nothing, and I didn't watch the end of it, but I gather that he did a couple of million quid's worth of business in 90 days whilst sleeping rough, effectively. So, kind of hats off to him on that. Yeah,
no, the guy's knocking it out of the park. So Grant, it's similar, right? I mean, he has a slightly different slant. It's very focused on him and his personality and those things. And he's also very bullish about. He started off life with accredited investors, and then he got involved in the what we call the Regulation A, which is the non-accredited investors. And I think he does a bit of both right now, which we do as well. His model's a little different. I couldn't get into the detail of it because that would be a 2-hour conversation, but he tends to do more of the shiny object stuff. Like if you look at his real estate, it's very flashy. It's what we call class A.
Sure.
We're in the C and B. There's not much value add to what he's doing, right? So it's just a slightly different model. He's in Florida. That stuff is like going crazy in Florida. He's made people a lot of money, very successful. I would say moving forward, personally, I would be a little nervous on Class A type assets because there's no upside to them. And when you don't have an upside, you're really relying on, well, let's hope the original business plan works. Whereas what we do is workforce housing, where we can add value, we can renovate, we can bring people in, and we can lift rents.
Okay, and
so
in terms of that as a model, what kind of, I don't know what a rent would look like, but what kind of proportion are you seeing that you're able to lift them to? Because obviously it's set by demand as well, right? Because if you rate it too high, you won't get people coming in.
Right, and sometimes it's a ratcheted process, right?
Yeah.
So, we did just have one asset with a partner where it was just undermanaged, and they hadn't lifted rents for 10 years. So they came in, they politely communicated to all the tenants and said, look, we're going to light touch this. We're going to repaint. It didn't need a lot. It just needed repainting and a few things. And they're like, look, we're going to have to lift rents a bit. We're not going to lift them to like what the neighboring asset is at, but we're going to ratchet it up over the next 2 or 3 years. So if you're, and as long as you're communicating with people, most folks know anyway that they're probably not paying top, the right market rate.
Yeah.
Getting a bit of a deal. Yeah. And so, and then we got another one we're involved in where the renovations, I think, are a year. So we're 6 months in. There'll be no lift, while the renos are happening, because that's the disruption to people. Then you don't do anything. And then you wait. And then you say, look, new people coming in will pay the new rate. The existing people, we're going to ratchet up. So you're not going in and being, this isn't like you'll be surprised at the people aspect of this business. We have folks that thank us. They go into the property office, right, the leasing office, and they say, thank you so much for coming in. And, this building was a mess. And we really appreciate that your new group came in. You've put in new facilities. The team's really good. We really appreciate it. It's much more fun and pleasant to live here. So we get that kind of comment too. There's always the one or two that are like, you guys are trying to come in and like take money from the poor and all, you know, and it's like, well, what do you want us to do? I mean, we're trying to improve these buildings, and we're trying to increase the lifestyle that you have here while you're living here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I saw in one of your email communications, you've successfully exited one of these. Is that correct?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, with a partner, an amazing group actually called Sundance Bay. Like, so one of the most credible groups in probably the whole of the US in that business. Those guys just knock it out of the park. I mean, they're unbelievable. But yeah, that was an Arizona asset. It was a bit of a bluebird. I think we got in and got out within 18 months.
Right. Because that isn't the model, is it? No, it's just somebody wanted the asset, and those guys had identified it way earlier. And you know, what I'm about to say is not atypical, and I can't be quoted on this, but at the asset level, I think the return was like 70 IRR or something like that, because it was a short period of time. Yeah,
right. It was short, and it was 3 times cash on cash or something, which is not, you know, that if we could do that every time, that'd be amazing. That's not always the case, but yeah. I mean, again, it's look, the model is a very simple one, right? It's the old thing. You buy a distressed asset in one of the better areas or growing areas, fix it up, and manage it, sit on it, and then sell it when it's appreciated. But at the same time, you're making all the rent growth.
Absolutely. And so how did you, I think from memory, you had strategic partners that kind of gave you the real estate exposure initially, and then I think from memory, you bought that expertise in-house. So you approached this with, should we say, some real estate experience from, you know, owning your own properties and so on and so forth, but not as a developer, not in kind of big ticket real estate. How did you make that transition? Because, you know, lots of the people that I know, you know, kind of want to be investors, and they're doing some bits and pieces, and, you know, quite often you get to a certain level and there'll be a buffer, and it's kind of pushing past that. So you clearly had a big vision from the outset in terms of, this is where we're going to get to, and this is the kind of process that we need to go through to achieve this. What was your kind of thoughts on that, and how did you kind of get through that process?
Yeah, it's a great question, Matt. It's the old Matt Lindsay thing. It's all a great. It's a learning curve, right? No, that's totally. I mean, we in this industry, in the niche of the niche of the niche, right? Multi-family value add acquisition, which is what we're really involved in. There are companies that have done it for 20 years that could stand up and say, every single asset we've ever done, we've done 500. They've all made money for their investors, right? I couldn't pretend that I have that experience.
Of course.
There's no point, right? It would be embarrassing. Sometimes these assets, when they go on the market, the seller will tell the agents, I only want companies that have 5 years experience and a track record. So you're not even getting invited to the party. It wouldn't matter if I turned up with a $20 million check. I'm not invited to that party, right? And so we absolutely had to lean on partners, and we still do, Matt. So a huge part of our model is, you know, you can't be all things to all people all the time, right?
Sure. No, and it's knowing your limitations as well, right?
It's knowing your skill sets. It's knowing. I always say this to the guys. This is a big to the team. Something I always say is your sweet spot that you're really good at is often also your blind spot. It's yin yang, right? It's the same. So the thing you're really good at, right? And so you're a great communicator with people. You're fantastic. That can also often be your blind spot, where you don't realize that that's actually a weak point. And so it's very interesting to kind of look at that. We recognize that, and we basically said, look, if we're going to grow this company, we can't. Are we an internet platform? Are we focusing on technology? Are we a fintech company? It's basically what we are. Or are we a real estate acquisition company? We have to blend the two, but we're leaning, and like you said, we've brought in some experienced some people with some gray hair that have a lot of experience on the real estate side, but we're not ever really going to be kind of this huge real estate acquisition company, because that's done by a lot of other people, and that's a whole industry in and of itself. What we're doing is we're working with them very closely with them, and we're opening the door to those relationships to our retail investors.
Absolutely, and that kind of brings us on nicely in terms of into what the kind of platform is today, and kind of what the vision of it is going forward. So I know we've spoken about this offline previously, but yeah, so where do you kind of see this going?
So right now we have one fund that's growing. We have about I haven't checked this morning, but I think we have 6,500 users on the platform. We have about 30-40 accounts opening every day. That's great. That goes up as we keep fine-tuning our ads. As Matt, as you and I know, split testing is everything. So we split test to the point that it drives me crazy, but we do. We just closed our seed round of funding. We got just over about 1.1 million and change. What's interesting is we did a combo of that, of accredited investors, and we did what's here in the US is called Reg CF, Reg crowdfunding. Right. So we allowed non-accredited investors to participate. So in my company, in the company I founded with my two partners, we have on the cap table retail investors who are in our real estate fund, and now they're part of our company. It's kind of cool. Yeah. And we'll probably do it again. There's actually a really cool company called Atlas Motor Vehicles. They're doing an electric vehicle platform, right? And they've crowdfunded all the way. They raised $30 million. They crowdfunded from day one. They've raised 30 million, and now they're going public. No VC, no private equity money. Wow. Pretty amazing. Yeah. Paradigm is shifting, and it's huge, right? So where do I see it going? I think the industry is moving. You're going to see huge brands using crowdfunding moving forward. They're going to spin subsections of their business off, because this is all about community. If you like someone's trainers brand or their iPhone cases or whatever, and you want to raise money, why not let the crowd fund it and be the best voice to do it? So where we are today is we've got one real estate fund. We've got 9 assets. We've invested into, I think it's 1,300 doors, either directly or with our partners. We're spinning off another fund. We'll probably have 3 or 4 by the time we're done here. Real estate, multifamily is where we're at today, but I'm looking at right now with a lot of partners, any other alternative assets. So anything that isn't stock shares, basically. So it could be real estate. It could be minerals. It could be other items, because I'm focused on building the community on our platform, and then we'll dovetail in other products and services into that. So people could say, yeah, I really love Caltier. I love what they're doing. I love the team. They're straightforward and upfront. I invested in their real estate fund. Now I might get into their XX fund or whatever the fund is going to be. We also have, just to finish it off, I'd also like to bring in other financial services to the company. So long-term value for us will be not just the real estate and the funds, but I'd like to bring in value-added services on the financial side. So that could be bank accounts, that could be credit solutions as well for people.
What about wealth management?
100%. Sorry, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we just registered. We have in the US, there is a product that the federal government, the IRS, allow you to use. It's called a self-directed IRA, which is an individual retirement account. Yeah. So it's like a what's it called in the US?
SIP or a SAS.
Yeah. Right. So same kind of thing, right? Here in the US, if you're under 50, I think it's $6,000 a year. You can put in. Peter Thiel from PayPal invested in Facebook using his self-directed IRA. So the gains he made on Facebook were tax-free. So on your self-directed IRA, they have a thing called an IRA where you can do stock shares. self-directed means you can direct it into companies and real estate. So we're very focused on that. We have a partner that we have a solution with. It's all online. We're turning that industry on its head. Typically that's paper driven. You have to have an agent. It takes a month. It's a pain. People can go on our platform. They can register an account. They can open up a self-directed IRA in 20 minutes, and they can move money from their Fidelity account into their self-directed IRA and then invest into our real estate fund. So yeah, wealth management, tax efficient solutions, all of those things are really important.
Absolutely. No, interesting. Well, no, it's good to see the progress that you've made, and yeah, each time I speak to you, it certainly is, yes, moving along in its life cycle. So what in terms of this, there's a few questions I always like to ask in terms of what do you think has been the biggest failure that you faced since starting this business? And obviously, as you know, business owners, there's constant failure, and it's overcoming these things. So from your perspective, what do you think the biggest failure that you've had to overcome, and how did you overcome it?
I think this is my fault. So when we started, I identified a number of people that I thought would be the team. And they're all really great people. It's just, as you know, Matt, because you built a number of companies, it's a long road and it's a hard road. And it takes a certain type of person with a certain type of mentality and a desire. And so what I did is I collated this team thinking if I could like put the team in a room, get the right members, you know, all you need to do is feed that team with food and opportunity and off we go, right?
Yeah.
And what I realized that wasn't the case. And we had people on our cap table who had, you know, ownership of our company, quite frankly, with all due respect to them, and I'm sure if they watch this, they'll agree. I mean, they didn't do anything because they had other things going on in their life. They didn't have the vision and the drive and the appetite that me and the other two founders that are now existing had. That was a problem because when we're fundraising, we now had, you know, or the equity in the company had to be repositioned. So you have that unfortunate conversation. We had to do it. We have to go back to them and say, you're not doing anything. We're trying to grow the company. You know, you need to give up some ownership, right?
Difficult conversation to have, for sure.
Very difficult. That, I think, as a founder, added a significant amount of time, like it added months and months and months. It slowed the company down. The other thing I hate, is I didn't go with my gut in certain aspects, like communication, like tone of voice to investors. There were some critical business decisions we made on the compliance side, because every decision we made, we were learning as we went, right?
Sure.
So it's very nerve-wracking because you're like, this one decision could bring everything down. But now I feel more confident. It's not like you're just going to make these unilateral decisions because you feel like it. You're obviously looking at all the data points and you're understanding what's going on. You're listening to people. But there were times when we dragged our feet because we were like, don't know. And it just wasted time. It's almost like a decision is better than no decision, basically.
Yeah. No, interesting. And in terms of the kind of alternative to that, so what's the greatest success, would you say?
I'd say our determination. Like we have a lot, you know, in this industry, what we're doing, because our offering is qualified by the SEC. We have FINRA regulations. You know, I have to be careful what I'm saying on this interview with you, you know, the show. It's people have come to us who support us. We have a lot of partners. We have a lot of vendors that we have to use. And they're like, we can't believe the resolve that the three of you have. Like we basically launched November 2019, COVID, the whole world went crazy.
I forgot about that. Yeah. Wow.
The whole world went crazy. March 2020, right? I also went through another relationship breakup around about that time. And so, and my partners have had some stuff going on. and it's the resolve. And I read, I can't remember where I got it from. Maybe I'll share it with you, Matt, if you want to put it in the show notes or whatever. But there's an article about what makes the biggest risks to startups. And I can't remember, it was like 10 things, but in the top 10, one is money, of course, running out of money, right? But in that too was the founders just running out of energy and steam. And just being
100%. I'm a firm believer that if you're, it's a startup that you're putting everything into, some of them aren't, some of them are. I think you can only do it a certain number of times before that's it. You've kind of depleted that energy.
I think you have a certain amount of money in your energy bank account.
Yeah.
And you have to be really careful where you spend it, because I totally agree with you. And you can see that with founders about exits, right? Like Elon Musk is a total crazy man who, I mean, I don't know how he has just, let's park him because he's just a separate thing. But most founders, different. So, I mean, possibly an alien from the planet. We don't know, right? But most founders will exit, they'll take their money and they'll probably start investing, and then they'll be like on the advisory council. They might do one other business from the ground up, but you very rarely see someone that's done 4 or 5. I agree with you for that very reason. You know, we talk about it a lot in the team. We're like, it feels, when you're in it, you feel like it's going slow, but when you stand back and look, you're like, wow, look at what we achieved in 6 months. And you've just got to not let the peaks and troughs really affect you. You just got to try and sit in the middle and say, doing the right thing, we know what works. Don't let it's the emotional side. The emotional side of business is the thing that really tires you out, right? I don't get tired writing emails and stuff like that, or reviewing legal docs, or planning stuff, or listening to someone and saying, I agree or don't agree. It's that emotional aspect of, man, can I get on? Can I do another one of these, And so I just think, if anybody's out there and you're having a hard time with your business, obviously look at the technical aspects of it and figure out, could I be doing this better, smarter, faster, cheaper? It's always a question to ask. But also stand back and don't get weary in well doing, right? Like, and I know we're running out of time in that, but what's the old Robert Kiyosaki thing, right? Look at 100 properties, put an offer in on 10, get a counter on 3, buy 1, right? I mean, driving around looking at 100 properties, that's so tiring.
But the reality is you can do that on Google Maps now, right? So, you can kind of accelerate that process rather than driving around in circles all day. Right.
And there are software and tools, right, that help you do that. But the point is, if that's the business and it works, I suffer from this a little bit, right? Sometimes things work really well, and then it kind of scares me. And I'm like, well, hold on. Why is that working? Whoa, hold on a second. And it's like, dude, just relax into it a little bit. Like, if it's working and making money, great. That's great. That's fantastic. Don't overthink the process. There, I used an English term. I didn't say process. Don't overthink it. Sometimes emotionally, it's like, if it's working and it feels good and you're making money, that's great. Just keep moving.
Yeah, 100%. In terms of things that inspire you, so is there anyone or anything that kind of, when the going gets tough, what do you do to kind of keep yourself focused and keep yourself motivated?
That's a great question. I don't know what it really is, Matt, but I do have an inner resolve always that, I can dig down and grab hold of. I think, to be perfectly honest, it's the will. It's almost like I want to succeed so that, when we first met, like I had that blog, right, which I don't have anymore. And it was all about, I think it's called Life Turnaround Now. And I loved sharing information. I'd review personal development and growth books and business books. So I think for me, in the corner of my mind's eye, I almost have a thing where I just want to share that other people can do. I want to do it because I don't consider myself particularly intelligent in any way, shape, or form. So I want to do it to show people and say, hey, like if I could be somewhat successful, then you can too, right? And I'm always pointing towards that. And I love to talk, as you can tell. But I love to share that type of information and talk with people like you too, who also get it and understand it and verbalize that. Because if one person watches this or one person subscribes, you get one new one. If one person listens to one of your episodes, right, and they're having a really bad time in life and they're wondering whether they should do another property, can I deal with another tenant? I don't know. And they listen to you or somebody who you interview and they go, you know what, I can pull my socks up and I can do this. That to me is a massive success.
100%.
Right.
And then when I started this thing, it was, we were in lockdown. It was, whenever January 20 and it was, or 21.
Right.
And it was like, we're in the depths of this thing. It's dark outside. You can't go outside anyway. And that was the kind of driver behind it, was to give, if someone's kind of on the fence about something, to give someone that kind of inspiration of you can do it. It can be hard. And the first thing you try probably won't work, but don't give up trying, because the alternative is that you end up in a situation where, you kind of get to retirement age and you're like, shit, what have I done with my life? Whereas the alternative is you're completely in control of your destiny. And actually, once you learn some of the skills, I know that if all fails, I could be making money within a week, with a new startup. And that, you don't want to have to go through that pain process, but you can do it.
Matt, I can agree more, and that, just the title of your show tells you that.
Yeah.
Right. It's called The Growth Show. It's and you're not just talking business. I mean, I know you have a big slump on real estate, but and finance, but it's you have to grow in all aspects. And just going back, that's the other thing with the founders, my founders, we've all grown as people, the three of us. Not only have we bonded, together, and we know each other kind of inside and out. We always laugh like we know each other better than, one of my partner's wife. I probably spend more time on the phone with him than he does with her, right?
Yeah.
But we've grown as people, and I certainly have, and I've certainly seen them grow as well. Like our skin has got tougher, emotionally we've got more resilient, and it's the team that makes it happen. You need a good idea, sure, but it's the team that makes it happen.
Yeah.
And I love the whole concept of the show, Matt. So it's great.
Awesome. Well, in terms of where we are today, I think that's my questions over. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add? And furthermore, where can we find you in terms of socials, websites, etc.?
Yeah, well, Matt, I just want to thank you for letting me come on and chit chat for an hour. And I hope anybody who's been listening to this, I just encourage you, if you're starting a business or you're feeling a little bit down right now about where you're at, tomorrow will come. You'll be okay. Take a deep breath. Maybe you need to take a day off and just go on your bike or go down by the river, whatever you need to do, go see family, but you can always restart, right? There's always another day to get going. You can find best place is just go to caltier.fund. So that's CALTIER.fund. That's the same on LinkedIn and Facebook, and then you can find me from there. I'm personally not particularly massively active on social media, but we are through the company. But caltier.fund is the place to go and check out what we're doing.
Awesome. Well, look, as I said kind of at the outset, it's been really interesting to see your kind of story develop. You moved to a new country, you didn't know anyone there, there must have been a huge kind of amount of fear that you've overcome to do what you've done. So to have a successful, congratulations on the fundraise. To see that get closed out is really exciting, and I'm looking forward to what comes next. And we'll hope to have you back on soon. We can be talking about the next phases of it.
Well, I'd love it. I'd love that.
Awesome. Cheers, Matt.
Cheers, Matt. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to The Growth Show with Matt Lindsay. Please like our podcast and subscribe today.